So
Hi,
Udi
Udi,
first,
how are you?
Good.
Udi, you can share like you did before, and
Yeah.
that'll work.
Okay, just one second. Yeah. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here with you, although only online. And thank you very much, Yehuda, for your presentation. I will enter a quite similar subject, I think, but from kind of an academic forensic point of view. Okay, but let's and I'll try to make it things much simpler from the other side. I think let's first of all start from the beginning, because again we are both speaking about Qatar, and we have to understand that Qatar has been a major patron of what we call the global Muslim Brotherhood, not the Middle Eastern official movement, rather than the global Muslim Brotherhood and all its affiliates around the world, which is, again, I mean, this is a huge and never-ending subject. So first of all, when we speak about Qatar, we have to first understand that it's a history and positioning. And I think this makes it, or hopefully for you guys, makes it appear in a different light from the common public image it has in the West. Qatar received its independence in 1971. It is situated between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudi Arabia, as we all know, is the Wahhabi state, and actually Qatar itself started out as a Wahhabi state. And Iran, of course, on the other side, represents or is based on the Shiite revolution, and therefore, again, I mean, Qatar had to find its place in a way. So, in a research paper written for the U.S. Congress, Qatar's policies in the last few decades have been described as a multi-directional balancing act, meaning that regionally they include maintaining good relations with Iran, with which it also shares large natural gas reserves, which are very much important now in light of what has been going on in Europe in the last few months. Globally, sorry, question for me?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Regionally, they include maintaining good relations. We spoke about Iran, and globally partnering with the US, especially via hosting CENTCOM, which is the forward military headquarters of the US Central Command, and making large investments, especially in Europe. Yeah, in businesses as well, many businesses there. And in addition, Qatar has gradually become a chief mediator in regional disputes between various Arab and Muslim countries. At the same time, Qatar has formed relations with Islamist powers across the Middle East and beyond, and has developed its soft power capabilities, utilizing the worlds of politics, academy, and the media. To this, we have to add the historic theological aspect with the strong influence that the global spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, has exerted on the royal family ever since he arrived in the country in 1961. Okay, his influence goes back to these days. This, as well as Muslim Brotherhood figures on the Ministry of Education at the country, various civil society structures, which helped them develop the speech on human rights and civil society that we hear a lot today. Now, the Qatari royal family has been supporting political Islamist activism around the world, as well as Middle Eastern terror groups. And this is both officially and semi-officially by the bodies that Yehuda also mentioned, Qatar Charity on the one hand, and more important to the academic, to the higher education field is Qatar Foundation. Of course, there are several others, but these I think are the two main NGOs actually controlled by the royal family. During recent years, after its wide intervention in the Arab Spring and the post-Arab Spring Middle East, Qatar was very heavily scrutinized by the other Gulf countries and Egypt, and therefore seems to have taken a step backwards in its direct involvement with activists or so-called, so-called grassroots groups, which eventually are not really grassroots, they only pretend to speak for grassroots, and instead refocus on higher political influence and lobbying, media, and the field of education. Now, the billions of dollars of donations to US universities, both reported and unreported, are all the subject of an ongoing research by ISGAP. They also involved board members in various universities, staff, the promotion of Islamist students in the various systems, and more. However, again, I mean, since we only have a very short time here, I would like to take you to a much shorter and I think straight to the point journey and to the other side. The way the Qataris are now able to rebrand, let's say, Muslim Brotherhood or political Islamism, political Islamist interests and figures, and bring them to the heart of Ivy League universities through Qatar Foundation. And here I go again to what Yehuda already mentioned. In 1997, Qatar Foundation launched its Qatar Education City in Doha. And since then, the Education City has grown to become a 12 square kilometer multi-university campus with students from over 50 countries. And it hosts the Qatar campuses of many, many universities that, again, that Yehuda mentioned, except for Yehuda, the UCL left 2 years ago, the British UCL, but still we have the Americans and the French university. It is also the house, here's the main point I would like to make. It is also the house of the Qatari Hamad bin Khalifa University, okay, which was founded in 2010. At the university, at the Hamad bin Khalifa University, we have the College of Islamic Studies that is brought together under its wings several Islamist centers, which are formerly part of the Qatar Faculty of Islamic Studies, which are the Qaradawi Center for Islamic Moderation and Renewal, and the Research Center for Islamic Legislation and Ethics, which was previously headed by Hassan al-Banna's grandson, Professor Tariq Ramadan, who is now standing on trial for various rape accusations. And there are several other centers which came under the wings of this college, of the CIS. The CIS in turn cooperates and has signed joint agreements with various institutions affiliated with political Islamism and the Muslim Brotherhood around the world, such as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC, the International Islamic University of Malaysia, IIUM, or the Istanbul-based Center for Islam and Global Affairs, SIGA, which has also become a major anti-Israel international hub. On the board of the CIS, there are several Western academics who have been supporting and promoting political Islamism. And the center has been hiring more and more scholars, both Muslim and non-Muslims, with expertise in Western universities. So again, I mean, this is all very complex, but in order to understand what has been going on there, of course, you have to examine each one of them to see where he's coming from. In any case, the CIS has thus been able to elevate itself. And in February this year, for example, one of its initiatives became part of a UN youth network called Sustainable Development Solutions Network. There are other departments, by the way, and centers at the universities, not only the CIS. Of course, in order to be able to know what has been going on there, we have to look at every one of them, and this we weren't able to do yet, but maybe in the future. But I can give you one example. Let's say that in November last year, it's the College of Public Policy, which is called the CPP, and at the university led a panel dedicated to discussing the most pressing issues facing the region and the field of higher education at the annual gathering of MESA, the Middle East Studies Association. And MESA, may I remind you guys, endorsed the BDS campaign in March 2022. So there could be some kind, could be coincidental, could be not. Thus, by creating an inviting space and strengthening academic ties, Qatar is easily able to open a wide door for political Islamism, whitewash it directly into leading international universities, and influence future research direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Udi. Benny? This is anti-Semitism. Benny Weinthal.
He's on Zoom.
I know.
He's just not physically.
Yeah, correct. I know. This is ancient art.
I don't know. Probably do that in a few minutes. I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly call. Does anybody, while we wait, do you want to ask Yehuda a question? I'm gonna call Benny. Hey, Benny. Benny,
Charles? Yes,
how are you?
good, good. How are you?
Good. So Benny Weinthal, he's a journalist for the Jerusalem Post, and he's published internationally in major newspapers and magazines. He has a degree from Cambridge, and he's been working with ISGAP for a while and other international organizations. He's very active on the issue of Iran and the rights of women and gay people and anti-Semitism with the regime. Benny, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I hear an echo.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's on our end. We're gonna fix it.
Okay,
Ben, are you sharing a screen?
Are you sharing a screen or just talking?
I'm just talking. Now it's better. No echo. Well, Charles, first, I'd like to thank ISGAP and you for inviting me to speak and for conducting this enormously important conference in Oxford, and for all of the work that ISGAP has done over the years in heightening awareness about contemporary anti-Semitism and changing policies and attitudes and laws to advance the fight against anti-Semitism. I'm going to just talk about, and I know we don't have much time, mainly the role of Qatar within the context of anti-terrorism, and so a little bit on Qatar's role at Northwestern University in Doha, where Northwestern has a campus. But the thrust of my talk will cover on a very surface level way, since we don't have much time, Qatar as, I would argue, a state sponsor of terrorism, and why Western universities and non-Western universities should be deeply alarmed about cooperating with Qatar's the state of the monarchy in Qatar within the context of the academy. So the first thing I'd like to say, because Charles mentioned the LGBTQ community, is the role of Qatar at Northwestern in Doha. In 2020, I wrote an article called "Strip Qatar's Homophobic Regime of the 2022 World Cup Now" on the website of Gay City News in New York City. It's the largest LGBTQ publication, I believe, in at least New York, but maybe the US. And one section was quite interesting because most folks don't know this. According to different studies, Qatar is the second most dangerous country for the LGBTQ community. That's why this World Cup is engulfed in controversy because of Qatar's lethal homophobia. But in that same year, in 2020, Northwestern University, the highly respected university in Evanston, Illinois, capitulated to anti-gay hysteria in the Gulf state and canceled a music event at its Qatar campus with an openly gay singer from the Lebanese indie rock band Marshru Leila. Writing on the website of Human Rights Watch in June, Yunus, the LGBTQ researcher from, as I mentioned, from Human Rights Watch, noted with respect to the ban cancellation, open quote, when Qatar paints LGBT rights as an imperialist agenda, it leaves LGBT people reluctant to speak out against government oppression for fear of being labeled traitors, as many LGBT Qataris have told Human Rights Watch, close quote. So we have there a crystal clear example of an elite Western university within Doha, violating its own principles, I would imagine, in back at its home campus in Evanston, about not discriminating against LGBTQ people. The story didn't get as much traction as one would expect, but it certainly gives you a sense of the climate that Qatar is promoting and creating on college campuses, where it controls, one could say, the academic center, for example, in Doha, where there are other Western universities located. The other points I'd like to make now, and I'll just transition to Qatar as a high intensity state sponsor of terrorism. And Qatar is one of those countries, and I've discussed this with numerous Israeli intelligence officials and other experts from the US, a country that likes to have its hand in multiple pots. So even though it promotes a very dangerous ideology, the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, it also promotes a very dangerous form of Shiite ideology, namely the ideology of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And a lot of my work in this area has been in showing how Qatar finances Hezbollah, a US designated terrorist organization. Also the British government recently designated all of Hezbollah as a terrorist movement. And of course, many European, Central American, Latin American countries, and Japan also consider Hezbollah a terrorist organization, Australia, etc. And starting in 2020, I delved into work on how Qatar's monarchy finances weapons deliveries to the global terrorist group Hezbollah, and provides funding. Now, why is this important for the Academy? Because it should disturb Western universities, especially British and American universities, and all countries. But America has its largest Middle East base located Al Udeid in Qatar, and it hosts the headquarters of the U.S. Central Command. And at the same time, Qatar's funding and cooperating with and advancing the ideologies of state sponsors of terrorism. How does it get away with this? Well, as folks have noted, it's just enormously wealthy. And in my view, it tries to be, congeniality I guess that's the right word. Qatar is a country that wants to, with the exception of Israel, wants to play the role of miscongeniality, that is, be respected and friendly with all different countries, whether it conforms to the Muslim Brotherhood ideology or not. Similar to Germany, Germany has a very similar foreign policy too, a policy of miscongeniality, where you don't pick fights with any countries, and you maintain friends with your enemies and what should be your enemies and your allies, and you just continue to engage in the business of, in the case of Germany, exports, taking priority over human rights, and in the case of Qatar, expanding dangerous Islamic ideologies. So back to Qatar and Hezbollah, a private security contractor in 2020 told me he had penetrated the security and defense establishment of Qatar, and that a member of the royal family authorized the delivery of military hardware to the US. I reported on this in the Jerusalem Post, Fox News Digital, and the Washington Examiner. It was picked up across the media, many outlets, I should say. And this dossier that the private security contractor, who used the name Jason G, outlined a sprawling terror finance scheme that aided Hezbollah, which is the Iranian regime's chief proxy. Now, how does this bring us back to the academy? Well, Iran also has pro-Iran regime loyalists in academies across the US who work for Iran's government. One case I've been working on right now, and ISGAP's aware of it, is the case of Oberlin College, which has been in the press lately because of the Rushdie assassination attempt. There's a former Iranian ambassador who works there, small liberal arts college in Ohio, who endorsed the campaign and the Islamic Republic of Iran's fatwa to assassinate Salman Rushdie while he was ambassador to the UN. He's never renounced his endorsement of the fatwa to murder the famous novelist Rushdie, and he continues to teach Islamic studies at Oberlin College. So my point is, there is sort of this very complex dialectic series of connections between Qatar and Iran and other countries, and that's why I consider Qatar to be, in addition to Iran, one of the most dangerous countries in the world, certainly within the Middle East. And not just because of its efforts to spread the Muslim Brotherhood ideology, but Qatar's efforts to advance the agenda of the worst state sponsor of terrorism, the Islamic Republic of Iran, according to the US State Department. Both Democratic and Republican administrations have identified Iran's regime as the worst international state sponsor of terrorism. And Qatar bends over backwards, not only to advance the chief strategic partner of Iran's regime, namely Hezbollah, but Iran itself. This leads me to a second story I did for the Washington Examiner, where the US State Department told me it opened an inquiry into an Israeli government report that Qatar's monarchy funded Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Now, I'd like to bring this back to academia because Salman Rushdie is a novelist. English departments across the world study Salman Rushdie's novels. And we now have a wildly rich country in the Gulf that funds the IRGC, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the Islam. And this is a US classified terrorist organization. This organization was in contact with the assassin, the suspected assassin who savagely stabbed Rushdie last Friday in upstate New York. That just came out according to a Vice news report on Sunday. The State Department said they were looking into the allegations about Qatar funding IRGC. I think it's a huge story. It didn't get as much traction as I thought it would, but 3 sources confirmed that the Israeli government provided a dossier to President Biden in 2021, stating that Qatar finances the IRGC. So again, Western universities that are concerned about freedom of speech and not creating a chilling climate for academics should be alarmed by this report that Qatar is now financing, according to Israel, the Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps. Now, again, that's a different form of Islam, but or extremist Islamism, I should say, to make the distinction between Islam and Islamism. I think that is important because Islam is not promoting terrorism. It's this brand of extremist Islamism. But Shiite Islamism is also on Qatar's agenda and has connections to, I would argue, Western universities where Iran plays a role, like in Oberlin, Ohio, with Mohalati. I should mention Mohammed Mohalati, is the former Iranian ambassador to the UN, promotes Muslim Brotherhood style ideologies in his classroom, in addition to Iran. This has all been uncovered in different reports. And most disturbingly is Amnesty International said that Mohammed Mohalati carried out, or covered up, I should say, crimes against humanity in 1988 by covering up the mass murder of 5,000 innocent Iranian political dissidents who were in prisons at the time. And as a result of this massacre, for the first time in the history of jurisprudence, a Iranian regime official, Hamid Nouri, was just convicted recently in Stockholm this year, in July, I believe, of playing a role in the massacre of Iranian dissidents in an Iranian prison back for the massacre in 1988. So this is an official who teaches who covered up the entire mass murder, who teaches at Oberlin, Ohio. And there's been a lot of reporting, including there was an article 2 days ago in the Daily Mail in the United Kingdom about Mohalati. And I also wrote about him too, endorsing the fatwa against Salman Rushdie. Now, would someone like Mohammed Mohalati, who's gone silent, ever criticize Qatar? No, because Qatar, again, is an ally of Iran's regime. I think that's how one has to view it. It's an ally of the world's worst state-sponsored terrorism. And because of its enormous wealth, it seems to get a free pass. And because it hosts the US military base in Qatar, within its borders, it gets a free pass. And I think those are questions for in terms of a counterterrorism study and project, one has to ask, should the Americans relocate their military base to a country that's allied with other American allies, real allies like Morocco or Jordan, or there's other Muslim majority countries, Bahrain, the UAE, that could host the military base, to send a message to Qatar that you need to stop spreading your dangerous Muslim Brotherhood ideology within universities and across the world, and supporting state sponsors of terrorism. I'm just curious, how much time do I have? Because I was planning to go on for several more hours, but I've told I have a time limit, and folks don't have a bottomless level of patience, and good questions are better than good answers. So I probably should stop here if I've reached the time limit. Is there someone who can respond from ISGAP, or Ehud, maybe you can unmute yourself? I think, have I crossed the?
Benny, can you hear me?
I think.
Yeah,
Benny, you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, Benny, so thank you. We all thank you. We applauded. I don't know if you heard us. Thank you for your presentation. So we have about 30 minutes for Q&A. So I'll open the floor up to questions. Anybody have a question or comment? Rami.
I have a quick comment about.
Well, I think Rami, actually, you have to come and sit here so the speakers can hear. But Rami Aziz is coming to ask a question at the computer.
I have a comment.
He has a comment.
Yeah.
For you, Yehuda, about why the money came from Qatar to UK, and after that, money is spreading out to another country. It's easy because the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood is located here in London. In London, a financial branch maybe, but the headquarters in London. So that is proof for us, without no doubt, that Qatar finances the Muslim Brotherhood activities, gives them the money, and after that, they are responsible to finance their branches and armies across the world. That is the comment. I know that Yehuda knows that well, but just for the people here.
But, I want to show you something. Can I show my presentation again, Daphne?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. Okay, I agree with you that the center is here, United Kingdom, but take a look at this map. How much money is being given to United Kingdom? Nothing.
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 We can't find.
Switzerland,
95.
why? It is a center?
The banks are there, the money are there. What?
Because there were problems.
Switzerland, by the way, is a center for the
Started looking at it.
branches.
Udi, 1 second, you'll comment after you, Yehuda.
The media started looking at Britain. So they decided not to transfer the money. Now I'll show you one more thing.
Please.
They stopped transferring the money to the United Kingdom in 2019 or 2017. They stopped. But this is the center. The center is here. Why did they stop sending the money to Britain?
Because in
Because
2015,
they were looking at it.
yeah, 2015, there is a large investigation here. In 2015, during David Cameron, I think.
There was the Qatar papers came out. And
Exactly.
In Britain.
this is how you hide the money. You conceal it.
You did a great job, really. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And also, in 2017, that's absolutely right. There was a big focus by Andrew Norfolk and many of the journalists here that did exposures on the Times about the paper, the Al-Ryan Bank and all these people. And that's what.
And also ISGAP. Yeah.
Definitely is, yeah. Okay, Udi, you were gonna say something?
Just.
Just a short note, maybe. Yeah, the Nectar Trust, or formerly the Qatar Charity UK, was set up first of all in order to run a whole project all around Europe, which was called the RICE project, which is some kind of translates like rain or something like that, which was supposed to enable them to set up something like I don't remember the exact number. I think over 200 Islamic centers, and I'm talking about huge complexes. Okay, not only mosques, but also schools and sports and family facilities. What they did back then was looking at strategic points in Europe where Muslims don't have enough mosques yet, and they wanted to establish these centers and in them put Muslim Brotherhood graduates of the college, the European College for Islamic Studies, which is again affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and simply this way also affect the local Muslim communities. Again, I mean, many of them simply want to come to pray. Okay, but if someone gives you a present with such a huge complex, you don't really ask too many questions about it. So this way they actually wanted to take over, let's say, the leadership over various Muslim communities across Europe. And again, I mean, this was all exposed. So therefore, as I also said, it looks like in the past 2 years, Qatar has moved upwards and backwards, meaning it is less involved now with directly on the ground, but it has gone much higher on politics, especially in the US, and on higher education. And in a way, it also enabled some space for its partner in this axis, the Turks. Yeah, so again,
Thanks,
just
Udi.
short.
If anybody has any questions or comments, you're welcome to come to the front. Yeah, I know. I
Okay,
know. If
so-
anybody else wants to come, you're welcome.
This is a question for Yehuda, but also anyone who has experience relating to UK charities. Looking at what you showed
Yes.
about the descriptions of what the money was being put into the UK
I
charities.
showed only a part of it, yeah.
Yes, but that what came through in every single case was the religious bit, right? In other words,
Prayer and education.
yes. So
This is
it's
not relief.
no, of course not. So my question is,
Yes.
you know, setting up a UK charity, it's quite difficult. I mean, you really have to.
The charity commission in Britain is not doing its work. The
Well,
regulator, yeah.
well, that's what I was
Yeah.
wanted
You're
to
right,
get
you're
at
right,
is, I mean, you know, it sticks out like a
Yeah, but the
total
reason they are not
no-brainer.
doing, they are working, the charities commission in Britain.
Yes,
If you put up a complaint,
yes.
they will look at it. If nobody's complaining, they don't care.
So we could put up complaints. They'd have to
Okay,
care.
now you can't, because the charity is not working anymore.
But the other one is
For
Nectar is.
2017, you see that there are no money going.
Yes,
in.
but it's just gone into another way. All we
Now
have to do
find
is.
where. We have to find where.
So,
Okay.
Usher and then Chelsea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much. It's a simple question. I just want to ask how money in universities changes curriculum or changes like the academic milieu in these universities. We've clearly shown the connection between Qatar and the money into the West. And then what happens then? Because at some point, I'm assuming non-Islamist Western like university bureaucrats have to be making decisions, and how does their mind get changed with the money?
I can answer I'm going to interrupt my colleagues. I'll give you a very simple answer. This program cost about $100,000 more or less. And we're creating a network, or we're discussing ideas that are going to change the way some of us think. I hope all of us think. For $100,000. Could you imagine tens of billions of dollars a year over 40 years? Imagine.
Enough to imagine, you can see.
All over the world.
That's my quick answer.
Thank you.
I can add something. You can imagine just there is one scholar in Northwestern University received before his session $1 million from Qatar. One scholar received $1 million. You can imagine.
One university, 1 billion. Wow. Texas A&M.
Can I just say something for Ash's question? I used to advise the Charities Commission, William Shaw, of course. It's actually not that difficult to set up a charity in the UK. You set up a not-for-profit, and then you set up a charity. The Charities Commission, if you make a complaint, will look for every way to not close down any charity. The worst they'll do in most cases is remove the trustees and put others in place. It is very difficult unless a charity is that directly supported, prescribed entity like ISIS, Al Qaeda. Virtually impossible to close down a charity once it's set up in the UK. I've had this battle many times.
Yeah. Hi. First of all, thank you guys so much for sharing your knowledge with us. So my question is, in terms of policy and creating policy change based on these findings, do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood would first need to be recognized as a terror organization in the West? Because I know that that seems to be a pretty large obstacle. And do you think that there is a way to lead to these same policy changes that we should be all striving for without designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terror organization?
Thanks. Important question. Benny, why don't you try?
Okay, I'll take a stab at it. Thank you, Mandisa. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Chelsea. It's okay.
Okay, why do I see Mandisa there? Who's that? Okay. Chelsea, thank you. Okay, apologies to Mandisa and Chelsea. Chelsea, it's a really excellent question. I think this is what mainly Western governments right now are struggling with. Obviously, Egypt has outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood as a as a terrorist organization. So Egypt considers it a terrorist organization, and many Middle Eastern Sunni countries like Saudi Arabia are also vehemently opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood movement and ideology. Again, Qatar is the leading sponsor of it. In the States, I think there's been discussions among certain politicians in Congress about designating the Muslim Brothers as a terrorist organization. Some think tank specialists, Mideast think tank specialists want certain figures, certain officials within the Muslim Brotherhood to be designated as terrorists, as individuals, to be classified as terrorists. I do remember reading, the great Middle East scholar's memoir, Bernard Lewis, who is originally from Britain and then taught at Princeton, and his final book, his memoir, and he's, in my view, the peerless scholar of the Middle East. He actually used the adjective or described the Muslim Brotherhood as dangerous, the ideology, in his memoir. And I thought that was quite interesting. So he recognized that the Muslim Brotherhood had reached this level of being a dangerous movement and has a dangerous ideology. Now, he didn't say it was a terrorist movement, but certainly, one could make, I think, a very compelling argument that the Muslim Brotherhood lays the foundation for an ideology that can animate terrorism. I just want to say one other thing, and I'm sure Ehud has probably thoughts on this, and I would defer to him since he's spent much more time on this. But in Germany, where I lived for over 15 years, the Muslim Brotherhood is largely, part of the mainstream there in terms of not being recognized as a dangerous movement. There's no real, like in Britain, in contrast to Britain, there's no tracking of Muslim Brotherhood finances at a sophisticated level. There's no real exposés or investigative studies about the influence of Muslim Brotherhood within universities. Even, I've been writing a lot about the German, just to give you a sense of sort of the Orwellian situation in Germany. The head of the Commissioner to Combat Anti-Semitism in the state of Baden-Württemberg, where Freiburg University is located, famous university where the Nazi philosopher Martin Heidegger taught, for those who know. Michael Blume, who's paid to fight anti-Semitism, has at times basically made this Muslim Brotherhood ideology politically and socially correct. And he doesn't oppose a partnership between Iran's regime and the city of Freiburg, where Germans go to Iran on tours. And Freiburg University, to its credit, did cancel its cooperation partner with Isfahan University. That's probably because Isfahan and is building nuclear weapons. And the Freiburg didn't want to get attached to that university, and also because that university held the Holocaust denial conference. But my point is, when you have a high-level official who's supposed to combat anti-Semitism, who's mainstreaming in many ways anti-Semitic ideologies, and was classified as an anti-Semite by the Simon Wiesenthal Center last year, Michael Blume, you get a sense of how deeply anchored the Muslim Brotherhood and these various dangerous Islamic ideologies are on the continent in Europe. Thank you.
Thanks, Benny. Thanks, Benny. Udi, do you wanted to say something, and then Harris?
Okay. So I think, okay. So just a short note, and I will also let Harris come in. I think, again, I mean, this is a question which always comes back to the table, but again, I mean, it is much more complex, meaning, as I was also mentioning before, we are not fighting here the official Middle Eastern Muslim Brotherhood movement, rather we are fighting the global network, which is called the Global Muslim Brotherhood. And here we come to many, many questions of defining, of, legal questions and issues. Eventually, again, I mean, the Brits had their own Muslim Brotherhood review, and they decided not to ban the Brotherhood at this stage. However, first of all, acknowledge that the Muslim Brotherhood is not the main representative of the Muslim community, as it has been claiming to be ever since it started its operation in Europe in the 1960s. Okay, so first of all, it's only one voice and not necessarily a leading voice. Again, I mean, it is very vocal. However, it is not a leading voice within the community itself. And secondly, so the government the government in Britain decided to no longer look at it as the main representative of the, or the community leaders or whatever it calls itself. Secondly, I think there should be a very gradual process of learning from different European countries which already started dealing with this question seriously, meaning the France, Germany. Again, I mean, Germany, there are many things going here and there, but still there is some advance in the way that the government has been looking on the subject. The Austrians. So this is, again, I mean, this is a whole learning process which we probably still need to undergo before we get to a situation where the Muslim Brotherhood, again, either banned or not banned, is left aside as something which is agreed upon is one of the sources of the problem and not necessarily the solution.
Thank you, Udi. And Udi, I know you and I have both been involved. I'm going to talk about the UK. The UK, two prime ministers looked at banning, not just one, two prime ministers. The Muslim Brotherhood does not meet the legal threshold as per the law of this country to be banned, to be prescribed. That's the correct terminology. Secondly, the Muslim Brotherhood in this country exists. Yes, the leadership's here. Exists, and I can probably rattle off 50 plus organizations that are separate entities. They're not officially Muslim Brotherhood, but set up by the Muslim Brotherhood. Many more. So one, it doesn't meet the legal threshold. And two, from a tactical perspective, it doesn't make sense to ban them when you've got all of these other MAB, Muslim Welfare House, all of these other organizations. But two prime ministers in the UK did look at it and wanted to do it.
Yes, I want to emphasize, first of all, what I've shown you is only a very small part of the money, very small part. For example, there is another organization called the Islamic Relief. Islamic Relief is not smaller. If I would put that, the Islamic Relief money on the map, I won't have enough places to put it. And the Islamic Relief is an organization that works globally. The money, the same sources, it has the same sources of money. And the money are also going to education, also in the States. So what I've shown you so far with Qatar Charity and Qatar Foundation is a very, very small part of the whole operation. Okay. And by the way, the center of the Islamic Relief is in Britain. The center of the Islamic Relief is in Britain. Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. And just a quick question about CARE, the Committee for American Islamic Relations, and their connection to the Muslim Brotherhood. And real quick, a couple of weeks ago, a guy that serves on the board of my organization, Coach Bruce Pearl, started Birthright Basketball in the NCAA and brought his team, Auburn University, to Israel to play 3 top-tier teams in Israel. And this is the beginning of an annual trip for top-tier US teams to travel to Israel on an educational trip, go to Yad Vashem, tour the country. So I wrote a piece about it in the Times of Israel and interviewed Coach Pearl. The next day, CARE picked up on the press and demanded that Auburn University cancel the entire trip because it was a trip to give false information to the team. So when I pushed back on social media, I just didn't have the information. I knew there was some kind of connection, that CARE is being funded by the Muslim Brotherhood, but is that fact or fiction?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, about CARE. CARE is working in North America, in Canada and United States, but it's a much smaller, from my point of view of finance, it's a much smaller organization from the financial point of view. The effect maybe can be much larger, but the amount of money involved with CARE, I'm speaking about in the distance of millions of dollars and not hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay.
Anybody else who wants to come?
Hello, I'm Avital. I'm from Israel. So I want to ask you, you three are from Israel, what's the reason that Israel allows 10 years or 15 years ago to Qatar, the government, to put money to build a football soccer ground stadium, yeah, in Sachin. If this is the situation, how it happened?
Government coalition.
Shall I step in? Very, very shortly, again, I'm not part of any official Israeli establishment, and therefore I allow myself to speak rather freely. I think that on one hand, Israel is aware of the many, many problems that Qatar has been creating, but on the other, I don't think Israel's treatment of Qatar has been very efficient. Sorry. So I know about many, many things that Qatar does in Israel as well, and simply go with a pass. So again, I don't really have an answer, but I share your thoughts.
Can I weigh in on that question?
Go ahead, Benny.
I'm sorry,
Benny.
did she, I don't know the woman's name from Israel, but did she ask?
Go ahead, Benny.
As I understand her question, she was asking why is Israel not also, why is Israel cooperating with Qatar, for example, allowing Qatar to send funds to the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip?
So you can comment on that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, as Ehud mentioned, that's that is a thorny question, because when the previous foreign minister Naftali Bennett was in the opposition, he criticized the government of Benjamin Netanyahu for sending funds, Qatari funds, to Gaza for the population. Now, there's nothing wrong with sending funds that reaches the population of Qatar for humanitarian reasons. The problem is, as we know, is these funds are fluid, and they end up in the coffers of the U.S. designated terrorist organization Hamas, which controls the Palestinian enclave of Gaza, and then those funds are used for nefarious reasons. Now they're using all types of systems to try to prevent the funds from reaching Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. For example, some type of chip card, I think, was introduced where each family could secure the funds as an individual family. But again, that's also, I've talked to counterterrorism officials, that system is also very vulnerable to abuse by the terrorist entities in Gaza. I don't think, it's the Israeli government's in a vice here in terms of this funding. No one really knows how best to handle it, because absent the funding, then Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad use the excuse, well, there's no funding, so we're going to start to rain down rockets on the Israeli population, and that creates another war. Ultimately, I think there's got, yeah.
Sorry, Benny, we're running out of time, and Avital has a quick follow-up.
Okay, that was it.
Sorry.
But thank you, Benny. It's very important what you said, but it's not the same, because Hamas and Gaza, it's out of Israel and is the enemy of Israel. And Sachin, it's a city in Israel which their inhabitants are Israeli citizens. It's not the same.
Thank you.
I agree. And just one last point is I don't think, personally, I don't think Israel should be cooperating with Qatar. I consider Qatar objectively as a state sponsor of terrorism. And I think that's how that's how Qatar's regime should be classified and viewed.
Firstly, I wanted to thank all of you for all your research and what you've actually proven, something that I've seen for a long time. I mean, as somebody who runs a Muslim organization in the UK and been a Muslim for 22 years, I've been going to various different institutions and mosques and things, and I've seen the influence, but then I can't quantify it. I can't prove it. I never expected that I'd be sitting here thanking Israeli professors for actually proving this. So I mean, just thank you so much for doing that. I mean, we owe you a great debt of gratitude there. But the thing is, it's like, somebody asked about CARE. Now, CARE is basically Muslim Brotherhood. It's an outfit, you know, probably funded as well, but it's an outfit of them. But the thing is, this is so much more dangerous because this is going into mainstream universities. And then this trickle effect over a period of time of changing people's thinking, changing the whole, how people see Jewish people, how people see the West, how people see, as I was talking to Charles, I'm concerned about the total erosion of Western values, Western principles, Western civilization. It's, for me, I converted to Islam, but I'm a Westerner. This is my civilization has been completely destroyed from the inside out through our own universities. And I also think, I mean, it's insidious to do it to, you know, a lot of my idols, people that I've admired over the years, I later found out to be Jewish, who were like professors in universities, who were, you know, achieved great things. And I didn't realize initially, because I just admire people for who they are, but the amounts that Jewish professors, Jewish academics, Jewish talented people have actually contributed to civilization. And then to actually, this has been deliberately targeted through this whole thing to completely invert that and make out that they're the bad guys. I mean, as a strategy, if we take a step back and look at this as a strategy, it is a totally brilliant strategy to destroy everything. And, you know, thankfully, you're exposing this academically in a way that's provable completely with facts and figures. And I just want to thank you for that. And that's my comments. And thank you.
Powerful words, Paul. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Linda, you want a final word?
The only thing I can say, this is the first time I'm in a place like this where you're all academic scholars. I'm not coming from the academy. I'm coming from the, you know, from the what is called in Yiddish the buchhalteria, from the bookkeeping, and that's where I come from. Now the mixture of my interest and your work, you can see the results. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, on behalf of everybody here, Udi and Benny, thank you very much. Yehuda, thank you for coming all the way to be here with us. And thank you for your comments, your powerful words, Paul, and good questions. And I hope you enjoyed lunch, and we're back at it at 2:30. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Got it. Thank you. The button is fun, no?
Yeah.
It makes me happy.